David Green, who, in my estimation, is the best running back in the league. Keith Baker has come across from Montreal, blinding speed, and they had the best defense in the Eastern Conference last year. So, I mean, Hamilton can very well win the Eastern Conference and knock off the Alouettes.
Don, what about the Toronto Argonauts? Poor Toronto, they've really been under the gun for how long? It seems years and years and years.
Only 30 years or so since they have won a Grey Cup. They were in one about 10 years ago, as a matter of fact. Didn't quite win it, lost it in the last couple of minutes. A new running back named Cedric Minter out of Idaho. Outstanding. Terry Metcalf type, perhaps sturdier, great moves. He'll be exciting. Quarterback, Condridge Holloway out of Tennessee from the Ottawa Rough Riders. Picked him up in the offseason in a deal. He will help Toronto, but still, too many holes, too many soft spots, especially defensively. Every game the Argos win is going to have to be 45-44 because the defense, I think, is suspect.
Now, for the Ottawa Rough Riders, of course, the big question mark is at quarterback. Condridge Holloway is no longer there. The offense is really up in the air. However, the Ottawa coach, George Brancato, thinks that his defense may be strong enough to hold the fort while the offense gets untracked.
Defensively, we're a lot stronger than we were last year, and our defensive backs, if they continue to improve and keep playing together the way they do, I think they'll be as good as anybody in the East. So I think right now we have to really bank on our defense until our quarterbacks develop and get our offense moving.
What about the quarterbacks with Condridge now gone? Who has surprised you there, or have all three impressed?
Well, Jordan Case has been injured, and we hope to get him in the Toronto game and see how he's developed. We only played him in the first half of the first Toronto game, and he hasn't played since. He hasn't thrown the ball in 10 days at least. So it's going to be a little tough for him, but we want to take a good look at him. Cal Cagney's the guy who surprised us. He came back in ready to go and in good shape, and he's throwing the ball real well.
Pat, what about the situation with the Ottawa Rough Riders?
Well, I'll tell you, George Brancato's a tough little guy from Brooklyn, and his defense just epitomizes what he's all about. The Ottawa coaching staff, in my estimation, is the best in the CFL. They're all guys who have played in the CFL. They're all tough customers. They want to grind it out. They've got great enthusiasm, and Ottawa could be the surprise team of the entire league. I would be flabbergasted if they won, but I think they could surprise some people.
Don, in Toronto, not only are there a lot of question marks, but they lost a great football performer in Terry Metcalf. He's left the CFL. How much is that going to hurt them and the league?
Well, with Minter coming on, it won't hurt them at all. Terry never got the job done in Canada the way he wanted to. The moves were still there. Frankly, the offensive line wasn't there for him, and he, believe me, gave it 100%. A guy couldn't try harder than Terry Metcalf did. He just didn't gain the yardage, so we wish him well in the NFL. But Minter is a young Metcalf. He'll be exciting.
What about the CFL's Western Conference? Is it Edmonton all by themselves, or are there pretenders to the throne? We'll take a look at the CFL's Western Division when the 1981 CFL preview resumes in just a moment.
What will happen to interest rates this year? How will Washington and international events affect your pocketbook? Will we have wage price controls? How can you profit in a recession? Should you buy real estate or other investments now or wait? Is gold a good investment? What's ahead for mortgage rates? Have your pencil and paper ready to write down this address. In one recent Kiplinger-Washington letter, subscribers read the answers to these and many more basic questions. Questions that will affect your pocketbook in the months ahead. Every week you can get up-to-the-minute straight answers to the most important questions in the day's economic pictures. Answers based on the best information available. Kiplinger editors talk to leaders of business, banking, retailing, and government. They ask the questions you want answers to, then they put their findings in clear, concise, no-nonsense terms. Nobody has the time personally to research, read, and digest all the material necessary to cope with today's complex, ever-changing scene. That's why the smart people, the decision-makers, count on the Kiplinger-Washington letter. Today, more than ever, you need this letter to move ahead and profit. That's why you should try, as an introductory offer, the Kiplinger letter for 5 months, 21 weekly issues for only $10. And get free this special report, The 1980s, A Fresh Look. What to expect, how to plan, how to make some money out of them. It's yours free when you try the Washington letter for 5 months, 21 weekly issues. And that's not all. When you send your check today, you also get this analytical report on how to deal with inflation, owning your own business, real estate. Should you buy gold, gems, bonds? A checklist of things to look for in stocks. Sound, down-to-earth judgment and advice. Most readers say they can't do without it, so don't miss out. Send your $10 to Kiplinger, Box 121, Plainville, Connecticut, 06062. If you don't make or save many times the $10, you keep these two valuable reports, the 1980s, A Fresh Look, and How to Deal with Inflation, and we'll refund the unused portion of your subscription. Isn't that fair enough? This could be the wisest investment you've ever made, so take advantage today by sending $10 to Kiplinger, Box 121, Plainville, Connecticut, 06062.
Welcome back to ESPN's 1981 CFL preview. We're less than 24 hours away from kickoff now of a brand new Canadian Football League season right here on ESPN. I'm Tom Mees with Pat Marsden and Don Chevrier. And gentlemen, I guess if there was one word to describe not only the CFL West but the entire CFL last year, it would have to be Edmonton, the Eskimos.
Absolutely.
Awesome Edmonton.
And still awesome Edmonton in '81.
Well, let's look at how the final standings emerged at the end of last season's regular championship year. And we see that the Edmonton Eskimos lost only 3 games all year, winning the division by 6 points over Dieter Brock and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Calgary Stampeders just made the playoffs. They were eliminated, though, by Winnipeg. British Columbia just losing out, and Saskatchewan, the only so-called doormat of the Western Division, with a 2-14 record. Now, when you talk about the Edmonton Eskimos, you have to talk about their quarterback, Warren Moon, the former All-American Washington Husky, led Washington, of course, to that great Rose Bowl upset a few years ago. And Warren Moon is the key to this Edmonton team. Now, the Edmonton Eskimos have won 3 straight Grey Cups, and the obvious question is, will this Eskimo ball club be overconfident heading into 1981?
Just has confidence, and there's a difference between confidence and cockiness. And we know what it takes to win because we've been there before, and we have good character ball players on this team who aren't going to take anything for granted. We're going to go out every week, we're going to play good ball, and we have a coach who keeps us that way. He keeps everyone in line and in tune, and we all work, like a fine-tuned machine. And I just hope that continues this year.
Well, the coach of the Edmonton Eskimos is the very able Hugh Campbell, and there is no team in sport that wins a championship without a good bench because injuries always crop up somewhere along the road. And the question we posed to Eskimo coach Hugh Campbell was, if there are some key injuries, can the Eskimos still get in there, win the Western Conference, and go on to another Grey Cup?
Some injuries that a lot of teams couldn't have survived. I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of about this football club. We lost 2 Shinley Award winners, outstanding pass receivers, and then we lost another Shinley Award winner, lineman, and the football club still managed to eke out a few more victories and make it to the playoffs, and then eventually the Grey Cup. I think that was quite an accomplishment for the team because the people that were playing at the end of the season were relatively inexperienced.
So, Pat, if there is a barometer on how good that Edmonton team is, how well their organization is patterned, it is the fact that they can lose key people, not only ordinary ball players, but key people, and come back with players to just blow everybody else out.
Absolutely. And, the other thing you've got to remember, Tom, and I'm glad that you had Huey on the show today, he's just a tremendous football coach, and he will be in the National Football League before he calls it a day. I can guarantee you that. He's a very innovative guy. He loves offense, and the players just revere him. They think he's a super, super guy, which he is.
Don, what about the Edmonton Eskimos? What is the feeling in the eastern part of Canada? Is there any hope? Can anybody dethrone this team?
Oh, yeah, there are preseason selectors picking Montreal to be in the Grey Cup and beat Edmonton in the Grey Cup game. And, of course, a one-shot game, you can have a thing like that happen. The test, though, will be the schedule, the full interlock this year. All the eastern teams home and away now with all these tough western teams, including Edmonton. I think the Eskimos are by far the best in the country. I think certainly they may have an easier time in the West than before, but as Pat says, the East will improve so much this year that come Grey Cup time, it will not be a cinch for the Eskimos.
What about the other teams in the Western Conference? Calgary is no slouch. They're a very good team. British Columbia, if they are healthy, can play with anyone, and Saskatchewan is much improved.
Well, I see a team, in decline, Saskatchewan still struggling. A team like Winnipeg, I think, has leveled off, perhaps. They had a good finish to last year. They were, I think, the second-best team in the country in November before the Grey Cup game. No question. You've got the BC Lions improving. Calgary in decline as well, I think. The Stampeders might have peaked, come back, and now I think they're going to have a rough season. Pat may agree or disagree.
What about Ardell Wiegand's situation out there?
Well, Ardell is obviously under the gun because he took over from a very popular guy, Jack Goda, who had coached in the World Football League and had been the general manager of Birmingham. Jack is now the general manager of the Calgary club. He passed the reins on to Ardell, who's in a tough job. There's no question about it. As Chevy said, they climbed the mountain, and maybe they're getting ready to slide down a little bit. But I want to say this much. The Edmonton Eskimos are in a class by themselves. There's no doubt about that. But I think everybody else in the Western Conference is now in the same class as the top teams in the Eastern Conference. That's why the league is going to be so interesting.
Let me ask both of you gentlemen's opinion about one player in particular. He was voted the top player in Canada last year, Dieter Brock, the quarterback with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Went to a small college here in the United States, Jacksonville, state of Alabama, known as the Mad Bomber, sort of like the Darryl LaMonica, if you will, the CFL. Is he that good? Is he on the decline, or is he going to get better?
He's got a great arm. I can't, unless the man simply comes up flat this year, and I can't imagine that happening. He's got all the skills to keep Winnipeg moving, and like Edmonton, they base their offense largely around the pass, and both have good arms. Moon for the Eskimos and Brock equally fine as a thrower for Winnipeg.
Well, Brock's the kind of guy that could throw a football through a car wash and the ball wouldn't be wet when
That's
it
right.
I mean, he really zings it. The negative comment about Dieter has always been that he'd rather throw the ball, whether it was second in inches to go or regardless, and it would always be an 80-yard pass. He seems to have leveled off a little bit and has more control of his emotions.
In the NFL, we hear of the throwing Samoan, Jack Thompson with Cincinnati. We have another Samoan quarterback with the
He's
BC
good,
Lions, Joe Palpal. What a name.
Well, Joe has got a great name, and he's a pretty good quarterback. Unfortunately, they can't keep him together. He was injured on 2 separate occasions last year, missed a total of 10 games. I mean, you cannot have your starting quarterback go down like that. BC, I'll tell you, if there's a real surprising team in the CFL this year, it may well be the British Columbia Lions. And I'll go out and make another prediction for you. The Lions, at some game this year, will beat the Edmonton Eskimos. I don't know when it's going to happen, whether it'll be in a playoff game or regular season. They will beat Edmonton because they have the potential to be an outstanding football club.
A word about the Saskatchewan Roughriders in Regina. Is there any hope for a 500 season maybe this year?
No. I don't think so. They were 2-14 last year. They may win 6 games this year, but I'm afraid it'll take more time. Last place is still theirs.
All right. Well, apparently there is hope for the future in Regina, but not exactly at the present. There are many, many issues concerning Canadian football play that we have yet to touch on. The CFL has made more preseason news this year in the United States than it has in many, many years. A lot of personalities to deal with. We'll be back to kick it around a little bit more on the 1981 CFL preview in just a moment.
Do you really have the world's greatest collection of Volkswagens?
Of course. Right here.
That's one Jetta. Where's the collection?
Jetta is a collection. It handles like a Scirocco.
Uh-huh.
It's roomy like a Dasher.
Yeah?
It gets terrific mileage like a Rabbit. And of course, it has fuel injection and front-wheel drive. Jetta even has a huge trunk.
I'm surprised no one came out with a car like Jetta before Volkswagen.
Really? I'm not.
All our best ideas in one car. Jetta.
You're on the right track for exciting Auto Racing 81 Wednesdays on ESPN. Join Bob Jenkins and Larry Newbert for USAC Sprint and Midget competition, as well as NASCAR IMSA and dirt races. Auto Racing 81 is bigger and better than ever, and it's right here each Wednesday on ESPN.
ESPN is your ticket to total sports. Saturday, international diving takes the plunge with the U.S. versus the People's Republic of China.
ESPN's July calendar is headlined by professional football from Canada, Davis Cup tennis, and AAA baseball during the strike. Former Ram Vince Ferragamo and his Montreal teammates signal a second big season of CFL action. Jimmy Connors and John McEnroe lead the United States against Czechoslovakia in 3 straight days of live Davis Cup play. We'll drive you right up to this year's British Open with highlights from the past 10. There's 4 more live NASL games and the British Soccer Championships. There's Grand Prix racing from Spain and South Africa, the WCT Challenge from Montreal, U.S. versus People's Republic of China diving, and a new CFL Weekly highlight show. You'll see boxing's USA Junior Olympic and Western Amateur Championships, women's softball, and kart auto racing. July means ESPN favorites, top-ranked boxing, Sports Talk, Auto Racing 81, NASL Weekly, PBA bowling, Australian rules football, PKA karate, and of course, Sports Center. July is another hot month of sports on ESPN.
Welcome back to the 1981 CFL preview. I'm Tom Mees with Pat Marsden and Don Chevrier. And gentlemen, the one man who has made more news for the CFL in the United States this year than anyone else has to be Nelson Scalabrini, the Canadian businessman who I think wants a piece of the action in every league in every country with his Montreal Alouettes. You talk about Vince Ferragamo, you talk about Billy White Shoes Johnson, James Scott, who is still nowhere around, and let's not forget David Overstreet. Is his impact on the game and the Canadian game, is it good for the game, bad for the game, and why?
I think it's good. I think it's great. It'll bring people out. It'll create excitement and names and a greater following for the CFL. And as you said, the attention in this country that I think CFL may have lacked over the years. Names certainly draw attention, and they have it now, and I'd love to see it keep going. What concerns me is the other element who say that he's pricing us out of the league. He's forcing demands on us, this is other team owners talking now,
right,
that we may not be able to meet. I think those people will adjust. I hope they will, because I see it as a very positive move.
Is that a good argument, Pat? The other owners saying, hey, you're driving up our salary scale, our structure. We're going to have to pay mediocre players big bucks now.
You know what it's like? It's George Steinbrenner of the Yankees, Griffiths of the Minnesota Twins. I mean, if you want to develop your own ball players, I suppose you can keep the salary cost down. If you want to go out and acquire the top names, it's going to cost you extra money. Nelson Scalabania has 30,000 seats that he hasn't been able to sell in Montreal, and he's hoping that Vince Ferragamo, Billy White Shoes Johnson, David Overstreet, AL can do the job. If they can, he's a genius. And I think he can.
You think he can? You don't think there's any doubt that he's going to have that stadium sold out?
Well, I'll tell you what my doubt is. My doubt is that I'm not convinced that Montreal is a great football city. It's a super major league town, but I don't think that football is their game. In Toronto, those three guys would sell out CNE Stadium every single game.
And the reason for that is why?
Toronto is a super sports town that has no bounds, really, except for perhaps soccer. That's the only exception I would make to that. The soccer team not playing well, not drawing well. Canadian football, very popular there. NFL football on television, extremely popular in Toronto. Baseball, the Blue Jays, a losing team. 1.5 million they've averaged the first 4 years of existence. Hockey, Maple Leafs, a terrible hockey team, sold out throughout the season. A good sports town.
But just to get back to your question, there is definitely some negatives about Scalabania spending this kind of money. The Canadian Football League is a tremendous entity, but it does have limits on the kind of bread that it can spend. And Montreal is in a totally different position than a team like Ottawa. I mean, Ottawa cannot go out and sign a $400,000 quarterback. Montreal can, but that's fine. I don't care about the economics. I've seen so much dull football in the Eastern Conference in the last 10 years that I'm really looking forward to this season, and that's all I care about.
Another guy who's going to liven things up in the Eastern Conference, Frank Kush. And we all know his past at Arizona State. He's second only to Bear Bryant in winning percentage, and yet he was fired there because of various legal items that came up. A former punter claimed that he punched them, and he's gone to court. He's been absolved of that charge. He's finding a new life in the CFL. How do you think he's going to do?
He's a good, solid football coach, no question about that. Techniques may be questionable somehow. I think he'll make the adjustment to the pros, because you can't treat pros the same as you treat college players. Different age level, different mentality, different outlook. These guys have been around a little bit. Once he makes that adjustment, which I think he will, he's tough, though. He's not the kind of guy you want to have a couple of beers with every night. I mean, he is the boss, and that's the way it works. Once the players accept that, if they do, they'll be a good team. If they don't, Hamilton could have a dissension problem, I think.
There's only one thing. The Hamilton Tiger Cats are an experienced football team. They've got experience at the quarterback spot. They've got experience at the running back spot. They have a good core of veterans, the kind of veterans that Frank Kush can relate to. Frank Kush only asks one thing: do the job when you're on the field. And if you do that job, you're going to get along fine with Frank Kush. That's why he was so successful at Arizona State. That's why I'm told he came within an eyelash of getting the Baltimore Colts job. And I think that's why he'll be great in Hamilton. Hamilton is a team to be reckoned with.
In about 30 seconds, if I could, a quick comment from each of you on the style of play, the caliber of play, the athletes in the CFL versus the NFL.
Different style, brought about by rules, dictated by rules. We were talking off-air a moment ago about NFL players could all make it in Canada. They couldn't. Different demands are placed on them. Different size, mobility, again, that word, very important with a wide field. Big differences. I guess we haven't got time to go into them all, but they exist.
Pat?
Well, they do exist simply because you're looking for speed in the CFL and you're looking for size in the National Football League. Terry Metcalf came off one of the greatest seasons in the history of National Football League play, came to the CFL, didn't do the job, not because he didn't try hard. Totally different games. A middle linebacker in the CFL has far greater demands on his abilities rather than his size than a middle linebacker in the NFL. Different games, both great. I think the CFL's is more exciting.
Well, in just a few hours, a brand new season kicks off in the CFL for 1981. We'll be carrying 2 games this big July 4th weekend on ESPN, and we'll tell you all about them and more when the 1981 CFL preview continues right after this word.
ESPN colors its sports red, white, and blue Saturday. The nation's capital is the scene of Johan Cruyff's return to the NASL starting lineup when the Diplomats host Seattle live. After SportsCenter, it's the national pastime on Independence Day as Evansville meets Indianapolis in AAA baseball. Then American exports Vince Ferragamo and White Shoes Johnson make their CFL regular season debut when Montreal visits British Columbia. Celebrate over 8 straight hours of live sports July 4th on ESPN.
ESPN takes you to the birthplace of golf to relive the great moments of the British Open Championships of the past decade. You'll see the true champions of the game competing in golf's most historic event in a full hour of highlights from each of the past 11 British Open Championships, beginning Sunday, July 5th on ESPN. ESPN is your ticket to total sports. Sunday, Auto Racing 81 steers you right to the Winston 500.
You've got a lot of good living ahead, so just do what the doctor has said. For the others who want you around, you've got to keep that high blood pressure down.
I'm so nervous. I hope I get that job. I gotta take a high blood pressure pill. All right, you can't take them just when you feel bad.
Frank, take these high blood pressure pills every day.
Except when I'm feeling good, right?
Even when you're feeling good, every day.
Mom, you've lost a little weight. That's why I stopped taking my high blood pressure pills. Mother, you can't do that.
You can't take care of high blood pressure now and then. You've got to stay on your treatment all the time. Do what your doctor says, no matter how you feel. It's a good life. Keep on living it for yourself and all those who love you.
Do it for yourself and all the loved ones in your life.
High blood pressure. Treat it for life.
The 1981 CFL season kicks off live on ESPN Friday night from Ottawa, Canada, as the Ottawa Rough Riders host the defending Grey Cup champion Edmonton Eskimos. You'll be able to see that game live at 8 Eastern Time, 5 Pacific Time. Then Saturday night, July 4th evening, a special premiere as the Montreal Alouettes under quarterback Vince Ferragamo make their CFL debut against the British Columbia Lions, 11 Eastern Time, Independence Night. That's 8 Pacific Time, prime time, so all you Ferragamo fans in the LA area, I know, will be tuning in. As far as the Ottawa-Edmonton game goes, Pat, you'll be working that game for ESPN. How do you see that one?
Well, it should be a foregone conclusion that Edmonton should win it, but let me pass along this statistic for you. Ottawa has beaten the Eskimos 5 of the last 6 times they've met. The Ottawa defense is a gambling one, and Edmonton really has never been able to figure them out. So I think that the Eskimos will have their hands full. They should be the favorites, but I don't think it'll be a cakewalk.
Don, what about Montreal Alouettes, Ferragamo opening, but on the road at British Columbia?
Well, it'll at least give people in the U.S. who still don't believe he is in Canada a chance to see that he is there. And playing for the Alouettes, pressure on the Alouettes to win their very first game this year, and all the money Skelbania has spent. Pressure on the hometown BC Lions to win their opener. Pow Pow, the quarterback there. Some great personalities, a great matchup, a lot of points will go up on the board.
Don Chevrier, thank you for coming down from the Toronto area to be with us on the CFL preview, and we look forward to seeing you throughout the season.
Thank you, Tom. Nice to be here.
And Pat Marsden as well. We look forward to hearing your play-by-play throughout the CFL season. Thanks for being with us.
Well, I'm looking forward to the season. I'll certainly look forward to seeing you again, too, Tom.
It should be an exciting season. I think we all three agree to that. The CFL season kicking off Friday night on ESPN. You've been watching the 1981 CFL preview. I'm Tom Mees for Pat Marsden and Don Chevrier. Thanks for being with us, everyone.